Someone at the Secretary of State's office must like it. Kidding, of course, for the recording. It's random. Anyone heard from Marna? Do we know if you're not expecting her? All right.
My phone, I can. So,
I got it. Go ahead and get started. Good evening. We will call this meeting to order. This is the January 21st, 2025 regular meeting of the Township Board of the Charter Township of Meridian. Our first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Will all those who are able please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3 on our agenda is a roll call. Will Clerk Demas please call the roll?
Supervisor Hendrickson,
Here.
Clerk Demas here, Treasurer DeShane,
Here.
Trustee Lentz,
Here.
Trustee Sunland,
Here.
Trustee Trezise,
Here.
Trustee Wilson. Here. Everyone is here.
Thank you very much. Our next agenda item is item 4A, presentations. We have one presentation this evening on electric vehicle fires, and for that we have Chief Hamill here to tell us a little bit more about procedures and protocols.
Supervisor, thank you. Board, I'm giving you all a copy of the PowerPoint just so you have it. I've been talking to interim manager Tim Schmidt a bit over the last few months in regards to kind of the difference between a regular car fire and an EV fire. Chances of having one are slim, but when we do, it's going to be, or could be, very interesting. And I want to go through kind of what happens, what an EV car is, and you may already know the technology, but I want to break some of the battery type stuff down and then talk about how we handle them and some of the implications that could come with a fire that we call thermal runaway, which is like an explosion, like a blowtorch, like fireworks. It's pretty interesting, and there's some pictures at the end that you'll see. If you really break down the amount of car sales since 2022 is really the information I've been able to find. So you look at the amount of sales in 2022, 10 million electric cars, 66 buses, and 60,000 medium heavy duty. 2023 was 1.2 million combination, and 2024 was 1.3 million. And if you've watched the news, you've most likely seen, such as Dearborn, where they had the Ford dealership where they had an EV fire, and it actually burned quite a lot of cars. Because it's when an EV car burns, it's pretty catastrophic. For the most part, there's been a couple barges where an EV car was in it, and they just evacuate everybody and let it burn. And these will burn everything up, obviously. And sometimes these fires, we potentially may be on them for hours, and I'll kind of get to that in a little bit also. So oops, I went too far, sorry. Why are not all my pictures? There's supposed to be more pictures there, but I apologize. So obviously trucks, sedans, Tesla, Chevy, Ford, BMW, semis, catabuses, public transportation, electric bikes, segways, mopeds, hoverboards, scooters, skateboards, and even your cell phone can catch on fire. Now, not to the catastrophic effect of a car, but your car has your phone has a EV battery in it, and you could actually, it could burn up in your pocket. It's not uncommon. It's not common, but it's happened. And you can find out there. New York City, if you ever really want to look at some of their studies, they're the they're the experts. They've had so many electrical type battery fires. The fire department's done some tremendous amount of studies. They've had some fire deaths. We've had 3 fires in the township, all in apartment complexes. And what they were just batteries being charged on the floor of the apartment. Luckily, they only burned the carpet a little bit. And some of the blame they're saying on this is aftermarket charging cables. And you may have heard me, but I've been pretty open with the M team that if we're gonna put in EV charging stations in township, do it away from buildings. Don't do it up here, do it over on the other side. Because those can malfunction also, and they can create fires. I would never recommend anybody charge a vehicle in their garage. My brother does it, and I tell him he's crazy, because if it does catch fire, there's a good chance your house is gonna burn and we're not going in, and I'll explain why. And we have some options. So there's multiple types of vehicles. There's a good video online of 2 young men that are going into an elevator in a big city, I think it was in China or something like that, and they had a moped. Moped starts smoking. Luckily, they hit floor 2, and as they jumped out of the elevator, the moped ignited into flames. So these are kind of the catastrophic effects if they happen, and I'll kind of go through how they happen. So on the next page, if you look, it kind of just breaks down, how a battery or how a vehicle is set up between the engine compartment, if you will, where your DC converters and AC or DC converters and all that, and how they connect. The batteries are in the middle on the bottom underneath the orange cables. And so the battery compartment is a lot of really little batteries all built together. And I'm going to show you a picture of that here momentarily. Oops, sorry. You have the writing in yours, but not on this. So the high voltage batteries are made up of what they call cells. So if you take just individual batteries and you take a box and there's individual compartments, they load them in there, and that makes the multiple cells make the battery module, if you will. And so many modules are put together, and it's better if you look at it. So there's your single battery. There is your module, and then the next one is your compartment, and then this is all sealed under the car. We do not have access to it, and we won't gain access because that could be catastrophic also. Now, as we've done our research, we've talked to GM, Chrysler, Ford, and they've all said the same thing: let them burn. Now, these are manufacturers if they catch on fire. We're not going to do that. Environmental, things like that, plus if they aren't in thermal overload, if you will, we can stop that to a degree, but there's a lot more to it than that. So these single cells can create the big module that comes together, but when we start getting failure is when a single cell fails and then the heat expands, and it's really in the form of a gas. So one of the things we teach in the fire service is called a BLEVE, a boiling liquid evaporation vapor explosion. So if you take a tank and you heat the gas in there like gasoline, and it's enclosed to enough where that pressure builds up, the tank explodes. So this is similar because what's happening is the gases are building up within that compartment. I showed you the third piece to where all the modules are together, and there's no escape. And so as that pressure builds and the more and more batteries fail at really a pretty low temperature, we can have a catastrophic effect, and I will show you that momentarily. And that's, again, a cell failure. So how this can start is as simple as a vehicle accident. If you look at the bottom left, in the first blue one, and what they're calling that is an abused cell. So a vehicle accident, there's been videos online, and you can still find them, where 2 EV vehicles collided and they both blew up indirectly. And so it doesn't take much. And when one fails, this is rapid. It's not like 5 minutes from now, the rest of the batteries fail. It's catastrophic really quick. And that's the energy that's released. And as you move to the next one, we start getting a kind of what they call a short circuit of all of them. And again, this is at low temperatures, 120 to 140 degrees, 340 degrees. 340 degrees is pretty hot. When we fight fire, it's roughly 1,200 degrees, depending on what stage it's in or higher. But this becomes also very highly toxic and flammable, and as it explodes, or actually as the chemical reaction happens, the batteries instantaneously can all fail at once. And so what that's called is exothermic effect. It's a chemical reaction. And when we have that, they don't need oxygen. So I'll tell you a true story in Germany, 2 tests that were done. They took EV car fires, submerged one in water, a couple hours later pulled it out and caught back on fire. Same thing with sand, a couple hours later, undug it, pulled it out, caught back on fire. So this exothermic effect in this heat doesn't go away. And again, remember, it's an enclosed compartment. And what they recommend we do is try to cool it. And I'll show you some pictures of that in a little bit. And so what you get, sorry, I gotta make sure I get everything for you. So it's really just this, you know, for a fire to happen, we need smoke, heat, and fuel. I'm sorry, heat, fuel, and oxygen. Got to have a fuel. This is a fuel. We have to have an ignition source, and we have to have oxygen. So when we put fires out, our goal is to eliminate one. We take some fuel away, the fire eventually goes out. We cool it, or we take away the oxygen. So like a CO2 fire extinguisher takes away the oxygen. Can't do that with this. We can put the car out, we can't put the batteries out. And again, they're in a sealed compartment anyway that we can't access. So as we have this what's called thermal runaway, this is when we have the catastrophic effect, which is like fireworks, it's like a blowtorch. And again, I'm going to show you pictures. And this is how we have to change how we operate when it comes to responding to one of these events. So we have to approach them what we call a 30-degree angle, and it protects us that if it does go into the thermal overload, then we protect ourselves because, again, I'm going to show you, you can look in the back page, a picture, it can be catastrophic. The last thing we want to do is hurt any of our firefighters or bystanders. So as we're in thermal runaway, I'm going to get to that here in a second. What you have, we look for signs. And some of the signs that we are looking for, kind of odd sounding, but popping, gunshot type sounds, hisses and whistles, because you've got that pressure building up in the compartment. Gas venting, a cherry bubblegum smell, which we won't smell because we wear SCBAs, which that always makes me kind of chuckle that that's a smell you get out of burning batteries. Potentially projectiles and cell debris. So we have to look for these little things that could lead to that thermal runaway or explosions and to protect ourselves. So the other thing with the EV vehicle fires is the vapor cloud is not really smoke. It's the chemical that's being given off by the burning batteries, because that will get out of the compartment. And so we have to be careful of that because that is obviously not good. But what does that lead to? About 90% of the fires will just be a regular, for the most part, a car fire. It's that 10% or that 90% that can lead to the thermal runaway. And so some of the stuff that's really recommended for us is to put the fire out, and then what we have to do is cool the undercarriage of the car or the vehicle where the battery compartment is to ambient temperature, hours. Okay, because remember, you're going to always have that chain reaction going on in there, and we can't access the compartment, so it's just a no-no. And then once we do cool it off enough and get the fire out, we also have to, the towing company has to understand, don't park this car near any other cars because there's a great chance of a rekindle, and I have some percentages on that momentarily. So some of the temperatures that you will see here, so in a normal fire, it's roughly 1,200 degrees for a car fire. EV fire, normal fire is 1,200 degrees. We get the thermal runaway, 4,900 degrees plus. It's a lot of heat right now. Okay, so when we fight fire, there's a thing called flashover. That's where we're in let's say a bedroom, and everything ignites all at once. It's called flashover. If you're stuck in that as a firefighter, you got about 2 seconds to get out. It's 2,500 degrees plus. Firefighters don't make it out of true flashovers if they're more than 10 feet in. This is much worse than that. But again, we're in an open area and we just have to protect ourselves. So we use water, spray water on them, protect the exposures and things like that. So the time to put out a standard normal fire is about 30 minutes. We can put them out pretty easy. We open the hood, make sure we disconnect the battery, things like that. An EV fire is 1 to 1.5 hours. If it's in thermal runaway, at least 8 hours. This is for us to extinguish it, cool it, and be safe to transport to wherever the tow company is going to take it. So for us, that's a long time. For me to commit someone 8 hours to a fire, that's potentially going to be some cost recovery. That's what insurance companies are for. The chances of rekindle for a normal car fire, I've never had one in my 34 years that I know of, so it's pretty low. For an EV fire is low, but when you have, once you've extinguished an EV fire, again, originally they want us to let it burn, and we're going to let it burn to a degree and protect exposures. But the rekindle chances are moderate to high. And this is, again, from the best practice manufacturers, NFPA, and some other standards we've looked at, best practices across the country, studies that New York have done. And there's tons of stories on these cars reigniting at the tow company's yard, wherever they store them. So guess who's going back and we're putting more water on the fire. So these are all things we have to be cognizant of. And then there's tools you can buy, and I'm going to show you a couple here in a little bit. And they serve a purpose to a degree, not cheap, but we have to look to see if they'll work for something what we do. East Lansing bought what's called a blanket. They're roughly around $3,000 or $4,000, but they use that for their parking structures. The main reason, if you have a small fire, they can put it over it, kind of smothers it to a degree to be able to get the car out and hopefully keep it going from the thermal explosion. Come on. It's stuck. Oh, there we go. So the amount of water that is going to be, again, this is best practice across the country, for the water that we'll need for a fire is roughly, our engines carry 1,000 gallons, the ones that we have. We can get a tanker for unhydrated in there anywhere from 2,000, 3,000 gallons to bring in extra water. In our ladder truck, once we get it back someday, it's 450 gallons. So a normal basic EV fire is going to be around up to 1,200 gallons. Some of the documentation I've seen with thermal runaway, 8,000 plus gallons. Plus, for sure. And when you see the picture I'm going to show you, you'll see what that means. And there's some great video online. One I saw, a bus actually burning in front of a high-rise, and it was in thermal runaway, and it was pretty explosive, scary. So what we're going to do is we're going to protect our exposures. One of the scariest things for me is if this ever happens in somebody's garage, and some of the recommendations is to try to get it out of the garage. Well, we're not going to just pull a car out of the garage that's on fire, especially if it's in the thermal burn. There are fire departments that have put devices on their vehicles to be able to yank them out. You still have to get in there and hook them. Some have had tow companies that'll do it. Well, they're putting themselves in harm. So in a situation like that, where we're protecting the exposure, let's say a house, from a garage, we're going to do the best to keep the fire from entering the house. But again, we have our limitations when it comes to a EV fire. And that was kind of one of the big things I wanted you guys to understand, because if we go to a fire tonight with an EV car that's in thermal runaway in their garage, there's a really good chance that house is burning down. And there's nothing we can do about it other than try to protect the exposure. And again, I'm going to show you a picture in a minute, and you'll understand a little bit more what that means. So there's other devices we can get. We want to make sure, obviously, the power's shut off at the house if it is plugged in, if we can, or unplug it if we can. So we have what's called an emergency plug, and I'm going to show you a picture of that in a minute. We bought this a couple years ago and actually tried it on the boss's car. It's a device like a banana, and you plug it into the port where you charge it and it actually just totally kills the car. Takes away all the power, puts it in neutral, and sometimes park, and even the parking brake. So we found that out with the boss's car where it actually put his emergency brake on, so he went to use it and couldn't go anywhere and figured out it put his emergency brake on. If we can do that. And that can be used with extrications, things like that. It protects us because we don't know if these cars are running. They're silent, right? So most times they're in gear. And so what we have to do is kind of what I call kill the car so it doesn't go anywhere. So we have emergency plug. East Lansing has what I said was a fire blanket. And then there's other stuff that's recommended online you can find from NFPA and Tesla. And, again, we're still doing a lot of research with Tesla, NFPA, and even a lot of what New York City's doing. It's amazing what you have to do to be prepared for this. So the bottom left is that plug. It's pretty cool, actually. It takes 4 batteries. It works great. The top middle is a blanket, and again, it smothers it. The bottom middle is what is a device that can be used to push under the vehicle once you raise it, and it sprays water and cools the battery compartment. The top right, that is thermal runaway. It's like a blowtorch. Again, there's great video out there of buses, vehicles, mopeds. You look at that, that's pretty catastrophic. Now, can you imagine a car doing that in someone's garage? That's bad. And this isn't going away anytime. It's going to do this for a while. I don't have a timeline. It's not like 2 minutes and it's done. This is going to last a while. And on the bottom is just an EV fire. Still pretty extensive, but my goal here tonight was just to kind of show you, the odds of having an EV fire, there's a lot of them on the road, it's not high, but it's when it happens, and it will eventually. It's going to be time intensive, and it could be catastrophic depending on where it's at. And that's what I really wanted you to know and be aware of, because if we do have this and it looks like we're not doing our job, there's a reason. Questions?
Board members, any questions? Trustee Lentz.
Yeah, thank you. This was very informative and a little concerning, but would I be correct in reading this that you said 10% of these EV crashes lead to that thermal runaway? You have that 90, okay, so
Yeah.
10%?
A lot of the thermal runaways that I've seen and researched, they just happen. They're not from a crash. One is a bus that pulled up right in front of high-rise buildings in a big city, I don't know what city, and it was smoking and everybody's evacuating and poof, it goes. The moped on the elevator. As soon as those 2 young men jumped out, it lit up. They were very lucky. So it doesn't have to be an accident. It can be just a failure of the batteries of some sort that can cause it also. And it doesn't take a tremendous amount of heat. These things give off, 100 to 300 degrees, and you could go into that thermal event.
Trustee Wilson.
You said when you started your discussion that there have been 3 fires like this in the township involving vehicles?
No, these were just the batteries in an apartment, in 3 apartment buildings. And
okay.
it really just burned the carpet up a little. And what they were doing is charging their batteries.
Okay.
I think one had one of those little things you stand on and ride down the road that would hurt me if I tried.
Overboard? Yeah.
And some of the blame they're saying on those is aftermarket charging cables. They just don't work well with the original design.
And those 3 incidences were over what period of time?
They actually, the first one was before COVID, and then we've had 2 since, so it's been 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
So not a lot, no.
Thank you.
And again, the apartments were very lucky, we got there quick. We were able to put it out, just a corner of the room was burnt, and that's it.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Other questions? So, for our residents at home, who are rightfully concerned about the possibility that this may happen, do you have any thoughts or advice on what steps they might be able to take to make your job easier in these cases?
My biggest thing is don't charge it in your garage. If I had one, someday I will, I'm not parking it in my garage. It's gonna be in my driveway. This time of year, that's not good, because it's gonna be cold. But that's just my recommendation. And, you know, even like charging stations, like I said, when I see some close to buildings, I just, because those fail, and they fail with being plugged into vehicles. So I would, you know, highly recommend here as we move forward someday where we put charging stations in, put them on the back of the parking lot, don't put them up close over here. But yeah, really, and make sure your equipment, your charging equipment's in good shape. It's not old, worn out, or be careful with aftermarket purchases of charging devices.
And have you seen, obviously this is, you know, it's not new technology, but it's relatively new in the span of the life cycle of cars in this country. Have we seen any, improvements in the technology that allow us to think that, hey, innovation is happening and we may find ourselves where this is less of a problem in the future?
No, I have no clue. Yeah,
Okay.
it's way above me.
You're not an engineer as well?
No. Again, we don't have many. We haven't had, I don't know of any in the metro area.
Mm-hmm.
I know the one in Dearborn, there's been a couple other down in the Detroit area. You see the news once in a while where you see them. Two barges I can think of in the last couple of years that were floating, and one of them caught on fire and they had to evacuate and just let them burn. So, it's almost, if you look at the Tesla in New Year's Eve, that blew up in Vegas. It's like that, only it sustains that force. And so that was a little bit different, but if you saw the video of that, that's pretty intense, and that's what these cars can do. But no, the technology, it's gonna get better. It is across the board. Tesla's got really good technology, been around a long time, and they have fires. So it's not one manufacturer over, it's all of them. It's the bus lines, it's mopeds, it's everything.
Does any of the existing data suggest that there's a environmental factor to this? Like it happens more often in the middle of summer when it's already 100 degrees out, or is that not?
I don't have that. I can look. I'd never
curious.
thought of that. Yeah. New York may have that.
Okay.
Yeah. New York's really taken their study to this level just because they've had some fire deaths, or people live there. And so they've really done their research because they've had thousands of fires. Mm-hmm. And it's probably not all vehicles, they're mopeds and things like that. So they've really gone to the extreme because there's not a lot of place to park stuff there. And when it happens, it's even worse, right? Because you're near a lot of people and big buildings. And so a little bit different than here.
Well, thank you. That's very helpful to hear, and hopefully we don't have to encounter this all that often.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is item 5, citizens address agenda items and non-agenda items. Members of the public who are here with us, if you'd like to speak to the board on a topic, we'd ask that you please fill out one of the green cards sitting on the table by the door and hand that to one of our township staff or one of the members of the board, and we'll have you come up to the podium. Public is restricted to 3 minutes to keep our meetings orderly. And so is there anyone in the public who wishes to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll close public comment at 6:28 p.m. Next up on our agenda is item 6, interim township manager report. And for that, we hand things over one more time to interim township manager Tim Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Couple of things, I'll be brief this evening. We've talked a lot about cleaning out the Red Cedar waterway to sort of get this idea of a water path essentially created between townships and connecting up to the river system more broadly regionally. RFP for that clearing is out, and that is something that we discussed multiple times with Director Wazinski about funding and utilizing some county resources there, and so we hope to see some movement on that front once it warms up, since we're obviously not doing that right now. Deer call is well underway. Current estimates are that the police portion of the call, which is currently underway, probably has about 2 more weeks remaining before we hit our state permitted numbers. Obviously, once we finalize that program, as we do every year, we will bring a presentation back to the board to discuss what went well, what changed, how much meat was donated, et cetera. So we expect that in either late February or early March. And lastly, I will point out if you haven't seen it, the new fire truck is out and about. I actually saw it today, getting refueled, sharp-looking vehicle. And the second engine, they will be inspecting tomorrow in Ohio and potentially taking delivery of in the very near future. And again, the training and setup phase for that should be much shorter since it is identical to the truck we just put into place. And so we've made some great progress in recent years on our equipment at the fire department. I think we will tout those successes in coming months and years. But that's all I have this evening. Thank you all very much. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Board members, any questions? I do have one before we let you go.
Yes?
We've been in the midst of a payroll cutover for a little while now. Are we feeling confident that we will be there by the next payroll?
Yeah, so operationally, we have discussed that we are doing payroll out of our new bank account this week.
Fabulous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is board member reports of activities and announcements. Any board members with reports this evening? Trustee Sunland.
Yes, I attended the Economic Development Corporation meeting on January 9th. And we were talking about some of our development projects. And I think the main thing that we were talking about at that meeting was the EDC Business and Facade Improvement Program. And I had never heard of that before, but there is grants out there to kind of go in, and it's just for the facade of the building. I think that might be going on the corner of Okemos and Jolly Road, that they're doing a facade improvement. So there are grants available, there are guidelines. I won't bore you with all the details, but it was a kind of an interesting concept to me that I just didn't even know that they had that available. So anyway, that was the major takeaway from that meeting.
Thank you
It
very
was
much.
kind of cool.
Good. Trustee Wilson.
I attended the CRC meeting, the Community Resource Commission meeting, 2 weeks ago. They were able to, with donations, were able to feed 280 families in this community that are low income with holiday baskets. So that was very impressive. We had a budget amendment in the fourth quarter of 2024 to raise the level of spending from $40,000 to $50,000 for our Meridian Cares program. And they spent every bit of that and a little bit more that came in from donations. So this is an essential program for our community when you realize that 19% of the folks who live in Meridian are low income. And I'm just really happy to participate in the events that they do and kind of monitor what's going on there. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Demas.
I attended my first Land Preservation Advisory Board meeting, and the main thing discussed was parcels for acquisition. Last Monday, I went to the grand opening for I Heart Mac and Cheese, so that went great.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Wentz.
Try it.
I did. It was really good.
It was really good. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah.
Right.
Just for mac and cheese. I love mac and cheese, but
Who doesn't? I gotta take my kids there.
I don't indulge
That's
very
basically all they
often.
eat. Trustee Wentz.
No, you're fine. I attended my first environmental commission meeting on the 9th of January. I was happy to say I wasn't the only first-time attendee for that board, but Bill has a good group there. We spent a good amount of time talking about the climate sustainability plan. I think there were some great ideas brought forward on what the township can do related to that document, maybe refreshing some areas. And
hoping to find a time to talk to Mr. Harvey about how to do that in a way that doesn't put undue burden on any of the commission members or the staff to recreate a document, unnecessarily. But I thought that went really well. Tomorrow, I'm attending my first of the Tri-County Regional Planning meetings, so I'm looking forward to that. And I got to meet with representative of the Greater Lansing Chamber to talk about Meridian's role in the region, which was, informative. I know the chamber is involved in a lot, so, whatever Meridian can do to be a part of that good region, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to hopefully attending as many of those monthly meetings on, I believe, Wednesday mornings as I can for, I think it is Meridian and East Lansing for that section. So I'm sure a few of us will be on that call.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Treasurer DeShane.
Thank you. Last Wednesday, I attended the January CATA board meeting, and it was a very good meeting. A lot of exciting things are happening with CATA. We're a big driver in their operations. We provide a significant amount of funding to them, and ridership in Meridian Township is up. Hope to have them here to speak at a meeting maybe as soon as early March. They used to give an annual report to the Transportation Commission, but that commission no longer is meeting. We're also going to be asking them for sponsorship for Prime Meridian. For our, yes, thank you, in July, and possibly other events as well. They want to get their name out, and we'll be glad to allow them to do that with our events. Today, the Materials Management Committee met in Ingham County. That's the commission countywide charged with come up with a comprehensive solid and waste management plan for the county, including recycling. We're hoping that one of the results of that committee is we get a second recycling center here in Meridian Township at Eagle's expense. Let them fund it. And then lastly, we give an update on the bank switchover. My office has been in charge of that, working closely with the finance director. We switched essentially all of our accounts over to Fifth Third in October. The ones we didn't switch were payroll because we wanted to give them more time. It's the more complex of them because there's virtually all of our paychecks are direct deposit, and they require a very complex electronic file to be uploaded. So we're doing some testing. We're very confident that the payroll this week will go very well. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it. We have 165 employees who are counting on their paycheck. It's Friday morning. So we'll keep the board updated.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Trustee Josias.
Yeah, I attended the zoning board of appeals last week. We had a couple of cases in front of us. One of them from Playmakers, who bought a couple of buildings over by Reala Elementary School that they use as a shipping point. And they have been there a few months, and they cannot get a truck into their parking lot. So they needed a waiver to get the truck off the street, and so that they can load and unload it. It was a minor change, and it was approved. The other issue has to do with the development from DTN off of Central Park, and they had a building site plan that was approved, and there's decks on all these duplexes and single families. They came back asking for a variance to change their design that would include some incursion of deck posts into the wetlands. We've asked them to look at their plan a little closer and reduce the number of incursions into the wetland buffer. So we hope to see them back next month.
Thank you.
That's it.
Our board members. Actually, that might have been everyone. I did not attend the Corridor Improvement Authority meeting this last week. It was canceled for lack of business, as I understand it. However, it sounds like they've got an exciting year ahead of them with some appreciation in the corridor that will give them some budget to work with. We're very excited to see how they will be able to implement the beautification and increase safety in the corridor. I also attended the Local Officers Compensation Commission meeting to offer some insight as to some of the comparables in the Greater Lansing region. And the results of their meeting are here in our packet this evening. Met today with a contact from ITC, and I'm so sorry, ITC, I did not recall what the acronym stands for, but they are responsible for the high voltage power generation towers, the equipment, and some of the substations in Meridian Township. It was an introductory call. However, we did quickly get to talking about the possibility of partnership with constructing pathway along the ITC property. And as you may recall, some of those properties were added to the pathway master plan in the last couple of years. And the goal would be eventually to swing down from the end of the Lake Lansing pathway, MSU to Lake Lansing pathway south along the ITC consumers right-of-way, and then eventually turn west and come all the way over toward Okemos Road. So it's very positive to hear that they may be able to be interested in partnering. My understanding is that they help to fund some of these in other communities. And so it's a win-win for both because they then would have a paved access to their equipment. So it's a ways out yet, but it was an interesting introduction, and we're looking forward to what that might look like. Our next meeting of the Senior and Community Center Task Force is 1 week from tonight at 6 p.m. in this room. For those of you watching at home, you can watch on home TV or come to join us in person. This is where the rubber hits the road. We're going to start talking about building layouts and cost, so and personnel. So that's going to be a come down to earth meeting, I think, as we sort of start to look at, what we may be able to assume in terms of costs and what that future might look like. So anyone's, of course, welcome to join us if they'd like, but that's again next Tuesday. We also have on February 11th, and we do have a meeting between now and then, but just so you can put it on your calendars, February 11th is our annual boards and commissions meeting. And that is where we bring in representatives from all of the various boards and commissions in the township, and they provide their annual report to the board. That's February 11th at 6 p.m. It is again a Tuesday, in case so it's nice and easy to remember. Just show up here 6 o'clock on Tuesdays, and you'll likely find us here doing something. And so we're looking forward to that. I should have mentioned that we should be having some more information about possible locations for the Senior Community Center in the coming days as well, as we hear back on a couple of outgoing communications. So keep your ear to the ground on that. And that is my report. Seeing no further reports of activities and announcement, we move on to agenda item 8, which is approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda this evening? Moved by Trustee Sunland.
I move to approve the agenda as written.
Thank you.
I'll support that.
Supported by Trustee Lentz. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next on our agenda this evening is our consent agenda, agenda item 9. This evening, we have several items on our consent agenda, including communications with the board, minutes from our January 7th, 2025 regular township board meeting, bills, resolution commemorating Black History Month, 2025 MDOT right-of-way permit, authorization of surplus property disposal, several board and commission appointments, and a resolution to amend our meeting calendar to change our April 1st meeting to April 3rd. That was at the request of those of us who are going to the MTA conference in April. One item I would highlight for whoever makes this motion, we did have one misspelling in the presentations section of our minutes. We got Sergeant spelled wrong for Mr. Strauss, or Sergeant Strauss. So if we could make that motion with the one spelling change, I would very much appreciate it. Make sure we look good for posterity. And with that, we'll open the floor for any motions. Clerk Demas.
I actually have a comment. This is related to item 9A. So late afternoon, last Friday, we received an email with a former letter attached regarding the El Camino Garage Bar liquor license from the applicant. This was sent to the board, so I'm sure at this point we've all reviewed it, but I'm bringing this up because this email is not in tonight's packet. To provide some clarity and transparency, we compile township board packets and complete them by the Thursday before the next township board meeting. So since tonight's packet was already published, this is why this email wasn't included in the board packet, but it is planned to be included in the next board packet. So I just wanted to bring attention to this since this correspondence has to do with an item on the agenda for tonight.
Thank you very much. Treasurer DeShane.
I also have a comment about the consent agenda. We've got 3 appointments on there. We've asked for more volunteers, and we're getting them. I want to thank Max Benoit for becoming a full-time member of the ZBA. Dave Leber for becoming a member of the Brownfields, and Dawn Orr for joining the CRC. We still have more appointments, but 3 in one meeting is a good start. Thank you to these citizens.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much. Any further discussion, or we'll entertain a motion? I
Move
see
the
no discussion.
consent
Sorry, go ahead,
agenda.
Trustee Wilson.
Move the consent agenda.
Support.
Okay, moved by Trustee Wilson, supported by Treasurer DeShane. Any further discussion? The motion is on the consent agenda. Clerk Demas, will you please call the roll?
Clerk Demas, yes. Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Lentz?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Trezise?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Hendrickson?
Yes.
Okay, everyone said yes.
All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is item 12A, ordinance 2025-02, a youth commission establishment final adoption. For this, we have Director Clark. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I have no other updates or changes from the last discussion when we reviewed the Youth Commission establishment. This is for its 3rd and final reading.
Thank you very much. Yes, we have talked about this a fair amount, starting back in the summer. And we got our act together, put together an ordinance, and have discussed it several times. And we do appreciate certainly the hard work that Director Clark, as well as Mr. Negasetti, have put into this, and Mr. Schmidt, who we know is involved as well. And no changes since our last meeting. Do we have any discussion on this topic? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion. Trustee Trezise.
I move for final adoption of ordinance number 2025-02 to amend Chapter 2, Article 6 of the Code of Ordinances to establish a youth commission for and in the Charter Township of Meridian.
Okay, it was moved by Trustee Trezise. Do we have a support? Supported by Clerk Demas. Any further discussion at this time? See, Clerk Demas.
I just want to say that I look forward to seeing the great work that will come from this commission, and I appreciate the time we've taken to discuss and move forward on this item.
Thank you very much. I do have a technical question here. Is there a cooling period before this actually goes into effect, or does it go into effect upon this evening's vote?
There is 30 days.
All right, very good. So unfortunately, we won't see them for our boards and commissions meeting, although I imagine they wouldn't have a whole lot to report just yet anyway. But we'll be seeing you hopefully February 21st. Some action on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion's on the table to adopt the ordinance amendment, adding the youth commission. Clerk Demas, will you please call the roll?
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Lentz?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Trezise?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Hendrickson?
Yes.
Clerk Demas, yes. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Clark. Next on our agenda is item 12B, the findings of the local officials compensation commission. I see Tim coming. I'll maybe steal his thunder here a little bit. The commission did vote at their meeting to offer increases to all the elected officials in the township. Those increases are enumerated in the letter that we find in our packet that Chair Vagnosi has signed. These take effect 30 days following it being filed with the clerk's office, which in this case was on January 15th. Unless the board takes specific action to reject the findings of the LOCC. So this item is on its packet this evening. This item is in our packet this evening, giving us the opportunity to object if we so choose. Otherwise, we can elect to take no action on this and move on to our next agenda item if we concur with their recommendations, or at least are not actively opposed to their recommendations. Mr. Schmidt, anything that I missed there?
Absolutely nothing, other than the fact that it was published properly, and the meeting was published properly, and they did meet in accordance with the requirements under state law.
Thank you. Board members, is it the pleasure of the board to take action this evening, or do we allow this to, do we take no action on this and allow them to take effect? We'll open the floor for discussion. Trustee Trezise.
This looks like about 2.5% or 3% increase to the wages, and that's since there hasn't been a raise in a couple of years, that I think it's appropriate without being excessive.
All right. Anyone else? Trustee Wilson.
I support no action and agree with Mr. Trezise.
Here, I got the name tag on.
Other board members? I concur. I think that this is a reasonable and fair increase. I think perhaps, the biggest change that, we'd like to see a little bit more of as the increase to our park commissioners. They are elected just as we are by the entire population of the township. And they are treated very differently from the elected board members. Their pay has been at $50 per meeting for quite some time now, several years. And the increases to $55 and $60 are certainly, a not insignificant change. It is something that we may wish to speak with the LOCC about in the future, if board members here or the park commissioners are interested in making a change, more permanent change to their payment structure. But overall, I think that these the presented amounts that were agreed to are fair across the board. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they stepped away from starting with percentages and finding numbers from those percentages necessarily at the end of it all, and just came to what they believe to be a relatively fair number. Yes, they are indeed around 3%, which is essentially what they've recommended the last 6-8 years. I sat on this body several cycles prior to joining the board, and it's been a pretty consistent 3% year over year. So they did not go 3%. However, I believe it was somewhere in the ballpark of 3.06% and 3%. So it was relatively similar to their previous action. And so I would support no action this evening. Anyone else? Seeing no desire to take action, we will then just simply move on to item 12C. And before we do, I will thank the LOCC for their work. It certainly is not easy. We're often working with incomplete information and simply what other communities have self-reported to organizations like the MML. And so it's not an easy feat to decide what to pay folks in any capacity. And so thank you to them for their hard work on that. Next up is agenda item 12C, the El Camino's Garage at 4790 South Hagedorn Road, Suite 102, a request for a Class C liquor license. Director Clark is back in front of us again.
Good evening. Provided a short summary for the board. Again, this is a Class C liquor license for El Camino Garage. The license location would fall outside of the Picas, and so that is something that the board has expressed as not their intent. There is a motion for adoption of the liquor license.
Thank you very much. And as a reminder, we did ask for in a previous version of these, and for the I Heart Mac and Cheese, we asked for a resolution in the affirmative, giving us the opportunity to either adapt the motion or vote no on adoption. Either is viable. And so if you're wondering, based on the discussion that we had at our last meeting, why there was a motion to adopt in the packet, that's why, similar to the I Heart Mac and Cheese resolution. Board members, any discussion at this time? The El Camino Garage liquor license. Trustee Lentz.
You know, I've thought about this quite a bit over the last couple weeks, and while I personally would love to be a patron at somewhere like this, I think the one of the main assets that comes before us on a regular basis are these Class C licenses, and so I am moved to agree with some of the comments made by Trustee Wilson when this has come up twice now about wanting to stick to our broader goals and staying in regions that the board has previously identified as being a priority for development in the township.
Thank you. Treasurer DeShane.
I too hope this restaurant opens. I think it'd be an asset to the community. At the same time, because of our limited number of licenses and our redevelopment, essential redevelopment, our two PICA areas, Four Corners and Hazlet, and the downtown area of Okemos, I too will oppose this because they're simply not in the right location for where we need redevelopment right now in Meridian Township.
Trustee Wilson.
I appreciate the impassioned communication that we received from you, Stacy, and the fact that you did significant research to show us what this restaurant was all about and how it compares to others. But it doesn't change the fundamental fact that we're trying to preserve our last two, at will, if you will, licenses for our areas that require some redevelopment. So regrettably, I am going to vote to deny this particular resolution.
Other board members? Treasurer DeShane.
I move to deny the local government approval resolutions to recommend and approve the issuance of a A4 quota Class C on-premise with Sunday and AM, PM sales liquor license to Stacy and Matthew Wozlok of El Camino's Garage, 4790 South Hagedorn Road, Suite 102.
It's been moved by Treasurer DeShane. Do we have a second? Second by Trustee Trezise. Any further discussion at this time? Trustee Wilson.
It's rather awkwardly written. The resolution to recommend and approve the issuance of A4 quota license. It doesn't make sense. So it should be A quota Class C on-premise license, shouldn't it?
Of a four,
The A should not be
A
there.
4 quota license? A 4 quota Class C? I don't know. I usually I'll defer that our staff has worded it correctly in this case.
Doesn't-
The issuance of a 4 quota Class C on-premise
Yeah.
with Sunday and AM and PM sales liquor license. I think
We need to eliminate the comma.
Yes.
both commas, I suppose, but I don't think it changes the
The meaning.
the intent of
No, I agree.
the motion.
It's just awkward.
Sure. Any further discussion on this motion? Yeah, I'll add to what my colleagues have already stated on this. We're expecting, we already have motion on our Hazlet Pika area. There are designs there. And one of those designs includes the construction, I believe, of a commercial space that they're intending to use for a restaurant. And if there's any way we can find you into that, I think that, you'll find yourselves in a much more favorable position, given the fact that we have identified location in the Pika areas as one of those key items that we hope to use these for. As Trustee Lentz said, I would be more than happy to come and patronize the establishment wherever it opens. And we know that it will, because I think that what we've seen here from you is the kind of, attitude that we expect will be successful, especially in this very difficult industry. In this case, however, I too will be supporting the motion to deny, but I do wish you the best of luck. Any other discussion at this time? Seeing none, Clerk Demas, will you please call the roll?
Trustee Lentz,
So I'd be in the affirmative, correct?
A vote in the affirmative would be to deny the liquor license.
Correct. Thank you for clarifying. Yes.
Trustee Sunland,
Yes.
Trustee Trezise,
Yes.
Trustee Wilson,
Yes.
Supervisor Hendrickson.
Yes.
Clerk Demas, yes. Treasurer DeShane.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Item 12D this evening is a text amendment 2025-01 Fire Code update for introduction. And we have Fire Inspector Tavis Millerov here with us. Welcome.
Good evening. We are back with our ordinance 2025-01 to update the International Fire Code, or the ordinance for the Meridian Township Fire Prevention Code, to the 2024 International Fire Code document with local amendments. We did make one change since the last meeting, which was at the request of the township attorney to tweak section 113.4, which is the violation penalties. They requested that we add the option for a civil infraction in there. Before. Since we've done this, it's been always a misdemeanor. And that seems to be a little bit of an easier route to take sometimes when we do this. But I do think it bears mentioning also that the fire code is meant to promote safety. It's not meant to be punitive. Yes, I can write citations and things out of this. However, that's a tool for compliance. And I'm very proud of the fact that I think on the 14th, I completed my 11th year and entered my 12th year of being the fire prevention person for the community. And I can still count on one hand how many of those I've written in 11 years. Okay, so it's a tool. And our first step is always to educate, and that's what we do. And by doing that, we typically gain compliance very easily. So, but I'm happy to answer any other questions you have.
Thank you very much. Board members, any discussion on this topic? You saw this about a month ago, and it seems like a relatively straightforward addition to our fire code, and so certainly appreciate the ease of implementation that seems to be present here. Last time I did ask if we can simply incorporate the International Fire Code and not have to revisit it. My understanding is that that is not a reasonable suggestion that our attorneys have.
As this changes, document changes every 3 years, and it gets rewritten. So as this changes happen, the local amendments have to also be brought up to date and through the legal process of the ordinances, it's not possible to do that. It's mentioned every single time. I mean, the book is, you can't memorize it. It's 2 volumes, and, it's a large document, so nobody wants to go through the whole thing again, trust me. But it's a necessary evil.
All right, well, thank you. Other board members? Seeing none, do we have a motion on this topic this evening? Trustee Wilson.
Move to approve the resolution to introduce ordinance number 2025-01, an ordinance to update the township code pursuant to the 2024 International Fire Code, including appendix chapters B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, K, N, and O, as published by the International Code Council with Meridian Township amendments.
It's been moved by Trustee Wilson,
I support that.
supported by Trustee Trezise. Any further discussion? Seeing none, as this is an ordinance amendment, will Clerk Demas please call the roll?
Trustee Sunland,
Yes.
Trustee Trezise.
Yes.
Trustee Wilson.
Yes.
Supervisor Hendrickson.
Yes.
Clerk Demas, yes. Treasurer DeShane.
Yes.
Trustee Lentz.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we'll see you back here one more time for final adoption. Appreciate it. Next up on our agenda is item 13A, a purchasing policy update. And for this, we turn things back over to interim township manager Tim Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. So one of the things I've asked Plant Moran to do while they're filling in as our finance director is to review some of our policies and try and update them where necessary in an aim towards streamlining our operations as best we can. And first and foremost is the purchasing policy itself. They had two changes, one of which, staff was pushing for, and I'll start with that one. This is to allow blanket purchase orders for services. Currently, we can't do that, and so what happens is, take Verizon, for example, we need to log in to get the bill the day it's released, so we can get it in the process, so we can get the bill paid, so there's not a late fee. And it is a lot of staff time that goes into that. This change would allow us to essentially establish a blanket purchase order, similar to what we do for some other goods and services, for those utilities or services that we know are recurring bills throughout the year. Then we can simply bill it against that, streamlines the process, saves us some time on the back end, and avoids late fees. Second change is to take the finance director out of the smallest purchases. Currently, they sign off on every single purchase on the back end of our system. Plant Moran noted that that is highly unusual in the world of municipal government, especially at our size. For the period between Christmas and New Year when they weren't here, there were several hundred invoices waiting for them when they got back, which is highly unusual. And so they are recommending that anything under $1,000 in the PO and I just lost my place, I apologize. In the PO and the accounts payable no longer require the finance director's approval. It starts with department head, and department heads are gonna have to take a more active role here. Then it goes to AP and accounting for final approval. So it's still touched by the finance department, it just takes the director themselves out of every single step of the process. Be happy to answer any more questions, but two relatively light changes to the purchasing policy. As I mentioned in my memo, we will have likely some changes to cash handling policy coming and a minor change to the credit card policy to address a end of year issue that we discovered this year. Nothing major, just trying to make it a little easier so when the auditors come, they see that we're following everything to a T.
Okay, thank you very much. This is on for discussion this evening. Board members, do we have any discussion? Trustee Lenz?
Apologies if I missed this in reviewing, but I did see the mention of late fees piling up as a good reason to adopt this. Curious if you, off the top of your head, would know about how much in late fees we're talking here for. I'm just curious how much money this is going to save on an annual basis.
It's not going to save us as much on late fees so much as the staff time that goes into it.
Yeah.
It's really that we're trying to spend the staff time to avoid the late fees. So we don't get late fees very often on things like this. It's because we are spending a fair amount of staff time up front trying to get there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Sunland?
Yeah, and I was just gonna confirm or concur that in my background with the state of Michigan, they were continually trying to include certain purchasing issues that you could approve administratively, so you didn't have to go through that process. So I think that this is just a trend that is occurring across the state.
Thank you. Trustee Trezise?
I think you're right. And I don't know that it's a trend. I think it's been a practice in a lot of places for years. So I think this is a reasonable step to take. Would point out that all of these expenditures would still be subject to audit
Absolutely.
on a sample basis to determine that there are no violations. So it's not like we're surrendering all control and not, I think anybody would take advantage of it, but mistakes do happen.
Absolutely.
And so this will all be subject to audit, and I think it's a reasonable step to take a lot of what essentially is busy work off the desk of a department director.
Okay. Trustee Wilson?
To add on to what you're saying, $1,000 is a fairly high threshold. Are you saying, Tim, that the department heads will be responsible for purchases below $1,000?
Yeah, the department heads, so right now as it is, everyone has to sign off on everything.
Okay,
All it does is it takes that first step of the finance director out of purchases under $1,000.
got it. Okay. Thank you.
Treasurer Shane.
The EFT approvals needs to be reworked, and you and I can discuss this later on. Right now, we've got accounting and finance approving those, which is essentially the same department. And our current practice is that accounting or payroll will draft it, and then the treasurer's office will approve it, or vice versa. We'll draft it and they'll approve it. So I want to talk with Pent and Rand more what their intention is with the EFTs, but that's the one area that stands out that we need to revise it before we bring it back to the board.
Yeah, so that hasn't changed from the current policy, so that's something that we can absolutely hold on to until we have a new finance director, so we get it right.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Sunland.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, with our incoming new finance director, if we can lighten the load a little bit and get these smaller amounts, because 1,000 really isn't a lot of money on the scale of township expenses. So I think it's just a good idea to kind of lighten his load just a tad and get him started off on the right foot and just, administratively get these, we can do this administratively, so it's just a good idea.
Thank you. Trustee Wilson.
Can we get a status on the hiring for the position of finance manager, director?
Yeah, we've got several applicants. Director Tiedoff and I are meeting tomorrow to discuss potentials and trying to get them scheduled for probably the second week of the new manager's term. As I mentioned, when this first started in October, that we would not be posting this until we could schedule the interviews for after the new manager started. And so now that we're there, we will have them scheduled likely the second week of his tenure. We did get some good traction posting it on the MGFOA, Michigan Government Financial Officers Association website. Got some good traction and some good candidates in the past few weeks here. So I think Director Tiedoff and I will go through them tomorrow and try and get some stuff set up.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? These seem like a couple of very straightforward policy changes. Obviously, the concern that we would express if we had one was on the relieving of the oversight of the finance director. However, seeing that it goes through 3 levels of approvals already does make me feel much more confident in the way we handle this. The only one that, the only edge case that I would ask, because I didn't, well, I see it, I think, in this area, is the accounting department. Are we then saying that the finance director is the department head signing off on all of the purchases of the finance department, and then it goes to accounts payable and then to accounting? It feels like an odd, it sort of throws, it's got to work somehow, right? Like, I understand that someone's got to have oversight control.
Generally, if accounting is listed in the back, so behind the curtain, well into operations here, behind the curtain, the director or the accountant can sign off on it. So in theory, what this is doing is taking the finance director out of double dipping, because in theory, the finance director could sign off, then it could go to the department head, AP, and then the finance director could sign off again. At this point, if it's accounting level, it's either the director or the accountant can sign off.
Right. I guess my concern was, say the finance director wishes to make a purchase. It is, in fact, their staff that signs off on the approvals in that case, is it not?
Correct.
That's what gives me a little bit of pause, because they are in a unique position of influence over the accounting staff in the worst case scenario. I guess I would just ask, how other communities do this for their finance departments to avoid that kind of very unlikely scenario.
Absolutely. Happy to look into that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I think overall, we're supportive of the changes as we've heard. I think a couple of outstanding questions, not many, but I think if we report this favorably at our next meeting, it'll be, once we get those questions answered, we'd be in good shape.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is item 13B, the rifle purchase program. With us this evening is Chief Grillo.
Thank you, Supervisor Hendrickson. Yes, present to you our, an addition or an update to our currently already existing rifle purchase program. Program began in 2012, and essentially what it does is we give our officers a menu, if you will, of options for different rifles that they can purchase, all approved by my internal experts, as well as accessories. Officers have to be off of probation to be eligible to make the purchase, and once they pick their rifle off the menu, if you will, it goes through a process where my range master reviews it, makes sure that it meets all the specs. I review it, make sure it meets all the specs. Then the manager reviews it. And what happens is the township provides a no-interest loan to the officer that's payable through payroll deductions over a 1 to 3 year period. The township actually owns the rifle until it's paid off. The employee then agrees that they will use this rifle while they are on duty every shift. And the reason we do this is to ensure, I guess there's many reasons. One, it ensures that there are enough rifles for everyone. We currently have a fleet of 10 rifles, but during the daytime, we can have up to 18 officers working between my investigations unit, school resource officers, my administrative staff. And when there's a large incident similar to what happened with the swatting at Okemos High School or the tragic shooting at MSU, we need all hands on deck to go to those calls. We want to make sure that everybody's equipped with the proper equipment. Also, the rifles are maintained in better shape than they would. Think of it as renting versus owning, rental car versus a car that you own, which you take better care of. They're customizable for each officer. I have officers that are 5 foot tall and 100 pounds, and I have officers that are 6'3" and 350 pounds. I have officers that are left-handed and right-handed, so it's important that they have a rifle that is customized to them. It also assists with our recruiting and retention. And so one thing that we add to the program now is the safe storage of the firearms at home. There was a law passed last year that had to do with safe storage of firearms in the home. I want to make sure that if my officers do have these rifles at home, that they are stored safely. So we're adding in the purchase of a gun safe with this. Many agencies in the area also have similar programs. Ingham County Sheriff's Office, Williamston Police Department, East Lansing Police Department, Howell Police Department, Charlotte, Hamburg Township, Lansing Police Department, MSU have similar programs, except they actually, the municipalities purchase the firearms for them. So what we're asking for is a change to the program. Due to inflation, everything costs more. We're looking to increase the total from $2,000 to $2,500 available to the officer to make this purchase, and up to another $500 if they need a safe. Officers are going to have to prove to me one way or another that they do have a safe if they aren't purchasing one, and they'll only be eligible to purchase a rifle. Either they have a safe or they're purchasing a safe to go with their rifle. I can say probably 50% of my officers have used this program at some point in the past, but some of us, such as myself, Captain Crane, Lieutenant Squires, Officer Royston, Lieutenant Bessinen, all the guys either have gray hair or no hair at all. Made their purchases 12 years ago, and obviously technology has changed. The weapons have changed, and we're looking to make updates to those. It's difficult for me to know how many officers already own a safe. I'd have to essentially take a poll on that. But just judging by what I know of my people, I'd anticipate that less than 10 don't have a safe that would be interested in going through this program. And I anticipate, with 9 officers currently on probation that aren't even eligible for this program at this time, somewhere between 6 and 12 in the next year would be interested in purchasing. I can say I currently have 3 applications on my desk, just waiting for approval. So open any questions you have.
Board members, any questions? Trustee Lenz.
In the current version of this program, is there money set aside and specific rules around having that safe storage at home, or did that only come into effect because of the state law that was passed in '24?
The safe storage is new. That's something that we are
Okay.
just implementing or asking to be implemented now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Trustee Wilson.
This program makes sense because it is the standard for multiple police departments, so we're not trying to do anything different from what they're doing. And as you said, inflation has caused the price of these items to go up. And why wouldn't we encourage gun safety at home, particularly since we have a lot of young officers with children in the home? So I think this is a great idea, and I'm glad we're able to offer these interest-free loans.
Trustee Trezise.
Yeah, just a question, is there a limit to the number of times this can be accessed by an officer?
Currently, the program allows for them to make a purchase once every 5 years, is what we're proposing.
Given the change in the equipment, is that a reasonable number? Liberal? I mean, what's your fee? You're the expert, I'm not.
Yeah, that's the number I came up with. And I mean, maybe you can say it's arbitrary or not, but I would say that with the changes in technology, once every 5 years is good. We don't want this to be an opportunity for officers just to collect guns necessarily. The
That was
purpose
my
of this-
concern.
Yeah, the purpose of this is to make sure that they are using the best equipment they can while they're on duty. What they do in their personal lives, that's up to them. But I think 5 years was the number that I came up with for this program.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Sunland.
I'm just wondering if, and I don't know that this happens very often because, you know, we want our police officers to stay, and I know we encourage them to stay, and, you know, we pay them well, so, but what if an officer has an opportunity to move to a different location in the state? What happens with that rifle? I mean, are they purchasing it, or do they take it with them?
Yes, ma'am. So they're contractually obligated to pay off the firearm until all payments are made. And again, it comes through payroll deductions. If they decide, 6 months before they have it paid off that they're going to leave for one reason or another, they have the option to surrender the firearm to us or to make the final payments on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
That helps.
And in those cases, they don't recuperate any of the cash that they have spent, correct?
Correct. If they decide to voluntarily surrender the firearm, then that's the end of it.
Okay. Treasurer DeShane.
So all rifles have to be approved by you or someone in the department before the purchase can be made?
That's correct.
Do you find yourself ever turning down requests?
So I guess the answer is so far, no. We did put some additional options on the menu, if you will, just different manufacturers. In the past, the administration had a preference towards one particular manufacturer, and it was every single gun had to be this particular manufacturer. I expanded that because, honestly, in our fleet, we expanded. We have Colts, we have 6 Hours, and I wanted to make sure that they had those options available as well. So the answer is I haven't denied anything yet, or my range master hasn't, but there is potential for that if I see something that I don't like.
Okay.
Trustee Lenz.
Sorry, I forgot the second part of my question. For those officers that are currently part of this program and have rifles, with that safe storage law coming into effect, you said that they need to prove in some way that they would acquire as safe for these new applicants. For those that, again, currently have these rifles, is there some check that you were able to do to confirm that they do have these under safe storage so that they don't have a different rule than a new applicant who would be applying and have to get a safe, of course?
So and that's a very interesting question because essentially what I would have to do is, obviously they have to sign a contract, right? Retroactively, I'm not sure how that works legally. If somebody already did purchase one last year or something like that, if I could say, no, you have to have, it's not part of their existing contract, so I'm not sure how, that might be a better question, I guess, for legal or something, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would think outside of this particular program, it'd be something to address during collective bargaining, if that was something the board was interested in pursuing for those folks who are senior veterans in the organization who were grandfathered through this process without it. However, it is worth pointing out that if anyone watching at home about this program does have that, is a party to this program, it is required by state law. And so regardless of whether or not we give you a loan to do so, which is, I think a relatively generous thing to do, they certainly have to have it by law anyway. And of course, officers of the law are keenly aware of that kind of thing.
Yep, absolutely.
Trustee Trezise.
I somewhat disagree with your statement that that's generous. I would say if we have officers who have possessed rifles legally and now have to buy a safe storage under the law, that I think supporting them by loaning them the money to do so with a repayment less than 3 years, obviously, makes sense so that they can comply with law.
Sorry, I guess I should clarify to say that I believe it's a generous thing that, we are helping them to comply with the law.
Right.
When we're not under an obligation to do so. However, and they're not under an obligation to purchase one of the rifles through this program either.
No.
So I guess my point is, we're taking the extra proactive step of ensuring that people who get rifles from us are doing so in a safe manner and are compliant with the law.
Okay.
Clerk Demas.
So Chief, just to understand, the safe storage, is that a reason why, is that a contributing factor to this increase?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am, it is. Again, an additional $500 beyond the $500 we're already asking for. So if you don't have a safe at home, increasing the number to 3,000. We just want to make sure that, officers who may not have $500 or $1,000 to make this happen, that we are making it so much easier for them to do that on a no-interest loan that just comes right out of your paycheck and just makes life easier for them.
Yeah. And to add on to that, so this program is similar to other programs in other townships. I see on here in the packet that this goal is to lead to more comfort, accuracy, and proficiency. Do we have any statistics, or will we have statistics on that from other townships and then here that we can see about how this increase and having more safety and customization will lead to those goals?
Yeah, I can just tell you anecdotally from somebody who's used our fleet rifles and also who currently has my own rifle. I can say that I'm much more comfortable with my own rifle because I know exactly how it's set up. I know that when I take it out of the case, it's going to be just as I left it. I know that the sling is going to be fitted properly. I know exactly where the button is to turn the light on when I need to, and I can't necessarily say that for every single rifle that's in the fleet. So again, anecdotally, it would be challenging for me to, give you a hard number or statistic, but I can just tell you if I got testimonials from other police administrators, they would probably say something similar to what I'm saying right now.
Yes, that makes sense. I just wanted to know when information was out there.
Yes, ma'am.
Great.
Yeah. I was trepidatious when this first came in front of us. I wonder, have we talked to our insurance agency about, what their thoughts are on this policy?
I can say recently, no, I have not reached out to our insurance company. I think historically that since we were one of the first agencies to do this, again, I'm speaking just from. I'm not 100% sure if that happened. And if you'd like me to reach out to our insurance agency, I will.
If they could provide a short synopsis of their thoughts on this. I mean,
Okay.
I understand that other communities are doing this, and I suspect that if this was an issue, that we'd have heard about it at some point. I mean, we're now 12 years into it here, and other communities are as well. I just would be interested to know if they have any concerns about the township being open to legal liability for this.
Yes, sir.
And perhaps, you know, the contract that the officers sign, if it doesn't already include some sort of an indemnification of the township, that we find a way to include that in the underlying policy, just to make sure that we've covered our bases and made sure that we're not opening ourselves up to potential lawsuit.
Okay.
And then my second question was, you talk about increasing the base price, the base, you know, costs from 2,000 to 2,500 with the 500 additional for the safe. However, our motion doesn't specifically call that out.
Okay.
Is that intentional?
I'm trying to remember if that was intentional or not. I don't know why that would have been intentional. I think I'm pretty specific in what I'm asking for, so I don't believe so, no, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I want to make sure that we don't find ourselves in a weird loophole where it's like, sure, I'll pay $10 for whatever the cheapest safe is to meet the bare minimum, you know, I'm sure they don't cost $10, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But to meet the bare minimum of the requirement, and now I get an extra, you know, $490 to spend on tricking the rifle out.
Yeah, well, and I would say, unless I'm mistaken, and I guess I'd have to check with HR on this, or payroll, the checks are made directly to the vendor and not to the officers. So
Sure.
I think that we can kind of mitigate some of those concerns with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I may be mistaken on that, but I'm 90% sure that's accurate.
Yeah. Just to, let's just, you know, square the circle and make sure that we're being positive about that. But otherwise, finding out about other communities, not hearing any horror stories from colleagues in other areas is certainly more encouraging than I found myself. So I can find myself in a better position to approve this now than I did maybe 3 months ago. So thank you for providing the additional information, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Okay, thank you.
All right. That brings us to the end of agenda item 13. Agenda item 14 is next, comments from the public. Any members of the public wishing to make comments this evening? Seeing none, we'll close public comment at 7:30. Agenda item 15 is other matters and board member comments. Any other matters? Oh, boy. I will simply say that it is going to be extremely cold out there over the next 24 hours. And so please stay safe as much as you can, stay inside. And we'll be looking forward to above zero temperatures in a couple of days. Next up on our agenda is item 16, adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Treasurer Duchesne, supported by Trustee Wilson. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? The motion carries, and we are adjourned at 7:31 PM.